Okay, guys, so here we are again. This is Miss Levy, and we are talking about Chapter 3, Key Issue 2. And Chapter 3, Key Issue 2 is about where are migrants located. And specifically, we will talk about immigration to the United States, how that has impacted the United States over the years. So let's start here on this tree map. Please pause and get this tree map if you don't have it right in front of you. As you can see, it's a bit blurry as I took a picture of it to upload it here so that we had something to follow along with. So as we can see that we're talking about the United States immigration patterns, so patterns of immigration to the United States. And people in the United States, unless you are Native American, the people within the United States are direct descendants of immigrants. And so likely your ancestors, your people, traveled here. If you are not Native American, your people traveled here in one of three phases of migration to the United States. Let's talk up here. This is phase one. Phase one was colonial immigration. This is the age of exploration and independence. We're talking about the 17th and 18th centuries. So this is the 16 and 1700s. So again, this is the age of exploration, so colonization and independence. This would have been the 17th and 18th centuries, so 16 and 1700s. So we're really talking about pre-independence. So this would have been all the migration to the United States, or what became known as the United States, until 1776, really. Really until 1800. So the vast majority of people during this time frame came from England and from Africa. And so when we talk about people coming from England, some of these people came voluntarily. They were looking for better opportunities. Some came because of religious and political persecution. Remember, the first pilgrims who came to the United States, they were coming because they wanted more economic freedoms, but mainly they were coming because of political and religious persecution. They were Protestants, and they were being persecuted throughout England. So prior to 1776, so pre-Declaration of Independence, it was a slow trickle of people coming to the United States. About 1 million people came from that earliest stage of settlement in the 1500s into the 1800s. Well, into 1776. And then from the 1770s to 1840, another 1 million people came. So once people started to come after independence, it really cranked up fast. So between independence and Civil War, a million people came within that time period. And 90% of the people did come from England. And this is because in England, they had pushed into stage two. The Industrial Revolution began in England in the 1750s, late 1700s. And the Industrial Revolution happened in the late 1700s. This is the invention of machines. So now all of a sudden we can use machines to complete tasks and to perform jobs. And once they had these machines, the Industrial Revolution, and this technology in the Industrial Revolution, the machines were able to, they improved farming methods, which improved food supply. They improved the infrastructure like sanitation and plumbing, which improved the death rates, lowered the death rates, improved life expectancy there. They were able to improve food processing, so now we can freeze or can foods, or meats were more sanitary. So this again lowers the death rate. So all of these things, these improvements in the Industrial Revolution, they caused them to push into stage two because they lower the death rates. So they still have those really high crude birth rate, and then lower the death rate. And what that does is it causes explosive population growth. So now England is growing substantially in population, and you have this wide scale migration of people from the rural areas, from the farms, into the cities. So with machines now, they no longer needed so many people who were in the farms. In the enclosure movement, they took so many small farms and they consolidated them into large farms. So now you have these people migrating to the cities. Some people worked in factories in the city, some started businesses, but some didn't like that life in the city and didn't want to stay there. So some of them migrated out and they came here to the New World, where they heard there was an abundance of farmland and freedoms and opportunity to be had. You just had to be willing to work hard. Then the other major source of migration during this time to the United States was from Africa. This is forced migration of slaves out of Africa to work on plantations in the South. In the 18th century, which is 1700s, 400,000 people were forcibly brought to plantations in the South. And then from 1800 to 1850, another 250,000 people were forced from Africa to plantations in the South. So a significant number of people from Africa were brought during that time. Next phase, let's talk about the phase of 19th century from Europe. So if your ancestors are European, so specifically if they've come from Germany, Ireland, Scandinavian countries, France, Italy, Eastern European countries, many of them may have come during this time. So this is 19th century, talking about 1800s. So from 1492 to 2000, 40 million people migrated here from Europe. Most went because they were farming transplants, and they were looking for economic success. Many used chain migration. This is why you have so many ethnic clustering in particular areas in the United States. For example, why you see so many Chinese people in San Francisco, why there's so many Polish people in Chicago, why there's so many Greek people living in Detroit and Michigan area. That's because of this chain migration. Why you saw so many German people move into places like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, is because chain migration. Whenever people from their communities or their farm or their family migrated, they would settle, and then they would send word back to their country to say, hey, if you want to follow, please come and I'll help you get set up. Germany was the largest source during this time. So there were 3 peaks in migration during this time as this technology from the Industrial Revolution from England, as it diffused to different places in Europe. So first peak was from 1840s to 1850s. 4 million people came, 90% from Northern and Western Europe, 2/5 from Ireland, and 1/3 from Germany. This is as that technology from the Industrial Revolution, as it diffused from England first, and it would have diffused like dominoes to whatever was closest to England. So Ireland was close to England, and then Germany was close to England. So it diffused first to them. Once the technology diffused to them, they had access to better farming, which would mean more food. They had access to better sanitation and infrastructure, which meant less deaths. They had access to better food processing and better machine processes, which all of these lowered the death rates. Once their death rate lowered, they pushed into stage 2. They had the same push-pull factors as the people in England had. And that now they have overpopulation problems. Once they have that stage 2 from the Industrial Revolution, they have explosive population growth, and that typically caused overpopulation problems of not enough jobs, not enough resources, not enough housing. So those are the push factors. They heard of these all this land and all this farmland available in the Americas, so you had all these excess people, so they migrated out. Then this declined during the United States Civil War, but then cranked right back up after the Civil War. 1870s to 1880s, 500,000 people came per year. Northern Western Europe, like Ireland, Germany, but then that Industrial Revolution technology diffused north into Scandinavia, so Norway and Sweden. Again, diffusion of that Industrial Revolution technology, the access to these machines and innovations, all of these better food supply, better sanitation, better food processing, better mechanical processes, lowered that death rate, caused explosive population growth, sent into stage 2, overpopulation problems, not enough jobs, not enough resources, not enough housing, not enough opportunities, not enough farmland for all the people. So they have those are the push factors, pull factors, the same. More jobs, more opportunities, more political freedoms, more religious freedoms, and farmland that's just waited to be settled. So they have extra people, those people migrate out. And so, again, this is a lot of them were the farmers who were moving into the cities to get jobs in the factories, and they didn't like it. So that's how a lot of German people ended up here. Third peak was 1895 to 1910. This is when 1 million people came per year. And 1907 was the peak, whenever 1.3 million people came. Again, this is as that technology diffused south and east. It spread into Italy, Russia, Austria, Hungary. Now they have that access to the technology from the Industrial Revolution. They have access to the machines. So now they have better machines to process more food for the people. Better sanitation, better infrastructure, better food processing, and better mechanical problems. All of these lowered the death rate, pushed them into stage 2, caused explosive population growth, overpopulation problems, not enough jobs, not enough housing, not enough resources, not enough farmland, and then therefore the same pull factors, a lot of jobs, a lot of housing, a lot of farmland, a lot of opportunity, political freedom, cultural freedom. So they migrated out. All of these things, all of these changes really were brought about by a change in the economic structure, which this would have been the shift from primary centric economy, which would be extract raw materials from the earth. These are farming, fishing, mining, logging, specifically farming jobs. A shift to the secondary sector as being the focus, which is when they take raw materials, they turn into finished products, which is manufacturing in a factory. That would have been exactly what the Industrial Revolution was. So this migration shift was really caused also in part by this shift in the economic structure from primary sector focus to secondary sector focus. Next, let's talk about this third phase of migration to the United States. This would have been the 20th and 21st century, so this is the 1900s and the present. This is more recently from LDCs. This is post-World War II. So after World War II, Europe had suffered a lot of deaths, and the U.S. helped to rebuild Europe, so all new factories, all new infrastructure and such. So most countries in Europe progressed out of stage 2 and into stage 3. So no longer were growing explosively, no longer had such an excess population of people who were willing to migrate out. So they shift from being a source of migration to now a destination for those countries that are now shifting into stage 2 around them, places in Africa, places in Southeast Asia, Southwest Asia, South Asia. So they now become the destination for those groups. So when we talk about the United States, our source shifted from Europe to being in Asia and Latin America. Let's talk about Asia. Asia was 1970s to 1980s. The most came from China, Philippines, India, Vietnam. They've been the most successful users of chain migration. They came for the same reasons. People migrate for the same reasons, political and economic reasons. Number one reason is jobs, economic purposes. As these countries in Asia shifted into stage 2, lower death rates, that's because of the medical revolution. They had an explosive population. They had overpopulation problems, not enough jobs, not enough housing, not enough resources. So they want to migrate out. Also, a source was from Latin America. This is our largest pattern in history. The most have come from Mexico, both legal and illegal. In 1986, the government passed the Immigration Reform and Control Act. They issued visas to thousands of people who were previously illegal, already living here. They just legalized them. 1991 was the most ever with 1.8 million. As Mexico pushed into stage 2 because of the medical revolution, they had the same overpopulation, same push-pull factors. Their experience has been a lot different because there's less land for them to settle on here, and a shift from second